I think that we can only learn from the life we've already lived. If you're spending too much time looking forward, you're not really in the present. So for me, I look at my life up to the very moment that I'm living it, and I'm just trying to make a couple of subtle changes, and hopefully someday getting to the point where, I'm constantly making those changes and living a life that I'm always proud of and always, happy to be doing. I'm always enjoying the journey.
And it's an extremely warm welcome now to the Global Travel Channel podcast show to Julia Rocket Sheehan. Julia, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for your patience. We had some challenge getting on today, and I've just been trying to explain to you all the excuses that I could have had.
Yeah, the sailboat wasn't a good enough excuse, so.
Well, we made it anyway. So for the sake of my listeners, can you tell us whereabouts in the world you're talking to us from today?
Of course, I am coming to you from a very small rural town in south central western Pennsylvania. It's called Somerset, Pennsylvania. It's a small farming community my parents live in.
Ah, beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, it's very
especially
country.
Especially this time of the year, because you're soon to come out of winter, aren't you, really?
Yes, right now everything's brown and wet. And so in the next 30 to 60 days, we'll have green, blooming flowers and trees. So.
Oh, beautiful. Now, this is a travel show, so why don't you tell everybody a couple of reasons why they should come and travel to where you are now? What are the highlights in that area?
Oh, well, so about 130 years ago, there was an epic flood that took out the city of Johnstown, which is the sister city to Somerset, where I was raised. And there's a really, really interesting flood museum that chronicles the story of the flood, what caused the flood, the aftermath of the flood. And it's a really beautifully, artistically designed museum. So if you're going to come to Johnstown or Somerset, Pennsylvania, you must see the Flood Museum.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that sounds cool. Now, is your accent from that area? Obviously, that's where you grew up and you were born?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of a, what would you call it, northeastern accent? Is that right?
Yeah, so Pennsylvania has two distinct accents, or maybe more, but two that I know of. The Philly accent on the eastern side of the state, which is, Philly, and, I don't know, it's a little harsher of an accent. And then where I live is more of like a middle of the ground, not too sharp. There's a couple of dialect changes. And then on the western side of the state, there's the Pittsburgh accent, which I can do a pretty good Pittsburgh accent because I live there, and if you'll have it, it goes, "Oh, are yins gonna go downtown later?" So that's the Pittsburgh accent. So yes.
That's so cool. So if you went up to New York City, would someone be able to pick pretty easily where you're from?
No, I think my accent is where I live and the way that I, enunciate. I don't think people generally ask me where I'm from. I've lived all over the country. So a lot of times people say I'm picking up a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but where are you from? So maybe someone else from here that's never left, I think you might be able to pick up on their accent, but it's not super well known.
So whereabouts have you lived in the US?
Oh, I lived in the Pacific Northwest for 3 years when I joined the military. Then I lived in Southern California for 3 years. I lived in Des Moines, Iowa for 4 years, and the rest of the time I've lived in or around the Pittsburgh area.
Wow, you've been coast to coast.
I have, yeah.
And what do you prefer?
I really prefer not living anywhere, if I have to be honest.
You just like to be on the go.
I do, yeah. I love traveling.
Yeah. I was really pumped up to talk with you today because I've been checking you out online, and I've got to say, actually, first of all, you've got the best Instagram account I've ever seen.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
Your photos, and I'm assuming you don't touch up your photos a lot. They look pretty raw to me.
For the most part,
right?
Yeah, you get what you see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they are fantastic. I was just absolutely captivated when I went to your Instagram account and started looking at some of those photographs and places you've been and the outdoorsy, and it's really incredible. It's like your photography. Have you done most of that photography yourself?
Yeah, I'm a professional photographer. in my spare time. So I love composing images and making photo magic, if you will.
Well, I'm going to put all the contact points in the show notes of the show today so people can go and check out. But check out Julia's Instagram page because it is truly outstanding. And it's got a really good vibe to it as well because you're such a happy-go-lucky, confident person. It just oozes that kind of energy off the page. And I think it's outstanding. So well done. You're doing a fantastic job on Instagram.
Thank you very much.
Now, what I usually do on my show is I get my guests to actually dedicate the show to someone special in their life. So who would you like to actually dedicate this show to today?
I would absolutely love to dedicate this show to my mom, who without her, I would not have the support and, love and all of the kudos from her. So definitely would like to give the show to her.
Okay, and what's your mum's name?
Her name is Victoria.
Victoria. Okay, well, a lovely dedication from your daughter today, Victoria. So you'll have to sit down together and listen to the show when it comes out.
Oh, we will.
Now, photographer, nurse, veteran, auntie, dog mum. Let's start off with perhaps the most important one of those, dog mum. So what's the name of the dog and what breed is it?
Oh my gosh, my dog's name is Jack. I call him Bean. I don't know. I think it derived from Jack and the Beanstalk. Beans, yeah. I'm not exactly sure, but he is a 10-year-old Shih Tzu Pomeranian, very vocal and annoying at times, but he is all mine, and I love him to death unconditionally.
Fantastic. Well, I have a cavoodle called Oscar who's sitting right next to me now, and I'm sure he would love Jack because Oscar loves every dog, and they're such an amazing creatures, aren't they?
They're so amazing, so special.
And I like the way you've given Jack a second name.
It just kind of happened.
I've done the same with Oscar. I call him Poodle all the time, and he's a cavoodle, but I call him Poodle, and he answers better to that than he does his own name. So,
as does Bean. Yeah, he really does.
I don't know what's going on there. Now, I'm going to read you something, and I want you to tell me what's behind it.
Okay.
Trying to live today a little better than yesterday.
Oh, of course. So I think that we can only learn from the life we've already lived. If you're spending too much time looking forward, you're not really in the present. So for me, I look at my life up to the very moment that I'm living it, and I'm just trying to make a couple of subtle changes, and hopefully someday getting to the point where, I'm constantly making those changes and living a life that I'm always proud of and always, happy to be doing. I'm always enjoying the journey.
Yeah, beautiful. So focusing on living in the now more.
Of course, yep.
Yeah. Was there some kind of epiphany behind that and why that came about?
I think for me, it's just understanding that you're going to have bad days. And, I working as a nurse, I have a lot of bad days. So when you have those days, you think, okay, well, I could have a bad night and then tomorrow morning could also be miserable. But, you have to just wake up every morning and not forget your past, not forget yesterday, but just grow from it.
Are you a Virgo?
I am my whole life I thought I was a Taurus. Come to find out, I'm a Gemini.
You're a Gemini, okay.
So, yeah, I'm a Gemini Taurus cusp.
Okay, so hence the traveling. So I did a survey recently of all my guests, and Geminis and Sagittarians are the two most popular star signs when it comes to travelers in my show.
Wow.
So there you go. You prove it statistically right again.
So I follow this app. It's called CoStar. I don't know if we can plug in things that, I don't pay for it. It's a free app, but I'm actually a Gemini baby with my sun and moon are both in Sagittarius. So I'm all realms, just a gypsy.
Yeah. So when you said before you can rather just live anywhere, that's where it comes from.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Now, Rocket, what's that about?
So that's my trail name. As when you become a long distance backpacker, or what we call is through hiking, you develop a trail name. You don't get to choose your trail name. It's usually anointed to you, kind of like in a knighting ceremony. And mine was Rocket. It's not the most glamorous story, but in the beginning of the Appalachian Trail that I hiked last year, I had a very runny nose, and I was constantly blowing my nose. And you do it with the one finger, we call it snot rocketing. And so that's how my name is in full, I guess. Snot Rocket, but Rocket Rocket officially.
Now, we're going to talk a lot about hiking today, in particular the Appalachian Trail, but I'm interested to go a little bit deeper into this naming thing. So who actually comes up with this name for you?
So it's your trail family. We call them Tramilies. And the people, so I've given a few trail names to strangers, to friends, to people in my trail family. But it's really anyone out there on the trail at that time. It could be a trail angel, which I'm sure we'll talk about. It could be another hiker. It could be, someone that you've met on trail. So anyone that has the idea to give you a trail name can pretty much name you.
So how many trails do you have to kind of do before you get a trail name?
I knew a man that got his trail name on a 200-mile trail. I got mine on the second or third week of the Appalachian Trail. So I think as long as you're out there for, more than a weekend hike, you've earned that. You've earned the trail name, You've earned the ability to get one.
Okay, so it's not like something where you have to do kind of 10 different trails in a certain area or season or whatever before you can get a trail name. It's basically after you've committed to a pretty long, decent hike.
Yep, once you're out there, your name's for the taking.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, before we get into really talking about a lot about hiking, let's congratulate you on your first half marathon finish just recently. How was that?
It was amazing. It was one of the coolest experiences of my life. It was grueling the last 3 miles. I broke a rib in December, so training was not really happening until right before. And it was glorious. My friend Erica, childhood best friend, she convinced me to fly to Tampa. And we ran it together. But she is a runner. She ran the Chicago Marathon in 2018, so she knows what she's doing. And she stuck with me the whole time, cheered me on when times got tough. And we crossed the finish line together, and it was amazing.
Well done. So what inspired you to do a half marathon?
I've always been a runner, but I've never committed to an actual half marathon. And so in 2018, when I started developing the idea of, living life a little better, getting rid of all of, trimming all the fat and just living my life the way I want, we decided, my friend Erica and I, that we would run one together for my first. And so this was our opportunity.
Yeah, great. Well, congratulations again. And going to Tampa to run a half marathon's a special part of the world as well. It's always great down there.
It's beautiful.
Did you have plenty of time to have some fun afterwards?
Oh, we went kayaking at the Wiki Washi, and it was really special. We saw manatees, which are like mermaids and whales all mixed together.
Yeah, they're beautiful animals, aren't they?
They really are. So we got to enjoy the sun.
They're weirdly beautiful, I would call them.
They're like
Weirdly
walruses,
beautiful.
elephants, and mermaids.
Yeah, combined into one. Now, I picked up on what you just said before, and a lot of people who listen to my show would be very interesting to find out a bit more about when you talked about kind of changing your life up and I guess making room for things related to travel. How did you get to that stage, if you like?
So for me, figuring out, I was working as a nurse. I lived in Pittsburgh. I owned a home. I figured that if I built a life, life would fill in the rest. If I bought a house, got a job, lived in a city that I thought would be exciting, and I did all those things, and then at the end of the day, I looked around and I thought, this really isn't working. Like the parts aren't just coming into the puzzle. The puzzle's still missing pieces. And I thought, well, what can I do? Because I've already checked all the boxes. I've already checked all the boxes of the world, and they're just not working. So for me, I had to find a new way to live, and I started doing just a little bit of surfing on Instagram, and it's kind of like the Appalachian Trail just jumped out at me. It became something that I was seeing. I thought, do I want to live in a van? Do I want to go to Europe? What do I want to do? And the Appalachian Trail just kind of came out of nowhere, and it said, hey, I'm right here, do this. And that's pretty much what started it all.
Yeah, brilliant. So had you done a lot of travel, particularly overseas, before that?
So when I was in the military, I had done quite a bit of traveling with my job. So I'd been to Germany, Spain, Alaska. I'd been to the Middle East, England, a couple other smaller places. So I traveled all over, and I really got the travel bug doing that. And so when I came back, when I got out of the military 5 years ago, my traveling kind of stalled. And I think that was what contributed to like a lot of me questioning my happiness because I wasn't
Mm.
doing something that I really enjoyed.
Mm. That's really interesting. I haven't had anybody on the show yet that's been related to the military or travelled with the military. So let's spend a couple of seconds talking about that. How did you first get into the military?
So I went to college right out of high school, and I spent a
Hmm.
year there, and I loved learning, but I just felt the environment of college was not suitable for me. It was party oriented, which I'm not, not to say that I didn't, but I felt that if I stayed in college, I would have been sucked into that mentality of partying and college and just that whole big machine that like big universities are. And so after my first year, I came home and I thought I got to get out of this town. As also, as Johnstown's not very well known for anything but a flood that pretty much killed a couple thousand people.
Right.
I I thought, how can I get away but do this responsibly? And an Air Force recruiter just happened to be standing there, and he kind of welcomed me in, and he, you know, proved to me and shown me the wonderful world of the Air Force. And within 3 weeks, I think I was actually in basic training.
Wow, that was a really fast transition in life. And how did you find the early days? Was it tough going?
The military was very difficult. As a 19-year-old, college student, you don't want anyone to
Mm.
tell you what to do. So the boot camp was, I thought of it as like G.I. Jane the movie. I thought I was in a movie. I had to run fast, do the pull-ups, play the game, and it
Yeah.
was enjoyable. But learning how to, work for the Department of Defense is just, it was very gut checking. You kind of just have to go with it, and your resistance will not be tolerated. So you have to
Mm.
you have
Mm.
to fit the mold.
So, had you been somebody before that had been disciplined by parents and stuff? Were you used to, I guess, discipline at that certain level?
My mom wasn't the most strict parent, but also had rules. And I think that kept us safe. My brother, sister, and I are all very similar in age. So we all got bad ideas together. And
Mm.
so we pushed the boundaries quite a little bit rebellious, all three of us, my poor mother. But yeah, we had structure, but I think that every kid still kind of defies that.
Mm. And what about traveling with the military? Did it get to a stage where you had quite a bit of time off base to go and visit some of these countries that you were based in?
So I was an airplane mechanic, and so we would fly with our airplanes to wherever their missions were. And so
Mm-hmm.
generally, this is the worst part of the traveling was we would land there on a Friday, and our to do the training mission, our plane was an air refueler, so it would refuel fighter jets and other planes in the air. And so we would get to Spain, and they did the mission on the way to Spain. We'd land in Spain. We call it turning a jet. You would
Mm-hmm.
refuel it and clean the windows and make sure everything was inspected properly. And then you would go out to dinner, have a few drinks, explore the city, and then you would most likely be leaving the next day. So you only got a couple of daylight hours to explore,
Mm.
which was kind of sad.
Mm. But here you are working on latest aircraft technology, which must have been pretty exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Our aircrafts were like 70 years old, so it wasn't
Oh, okay. So
it
it wasn't
wasn't the
wasn't latest
most
then.
technologically advanced job, but yeah, it was still interesting.
Yeah. And how did that travel that you experienced through the military, how did that change you as a human being? Or did it change you as a human being?
Of course, I got to see
Mm.
people living their everyday life in different cultures. We would go to Spain, and we got there at like the siesta hour, and so nothing was open. Everyone was inside. We're in this resort. We were in Sevilla, and we were in this beautiful resort town, and everyone's napping. And so we go and get some sangria, and there was one little backyard cafe that was open, and it was just so beautiful to see people just living their lives and enjoying the town that they lived in, that to them was just normal, but to us was this magical place.
Yeah. So, was as far as fitness and when you first joined the military, were you a fit person naturally, or was it something that came as a bit of a shock to get up to speed of what the military expectations were?
Of course, I always was a runner. I ran cross country in high school, and I was always running, a couple of miles a day and just trying to be healthy. So the military wasn't a hard transition for me. I loved the extra fitness that we were doing. I always like thrive in like when it's time to start training, like I'm really good at putting my head down and just focusing. So It was great. I was very fit when I was in the Air Force.
Mm. Well, David Goggins has recently come into my life via YouTube,
Hmm.
and I would say the last 6 months. And yeah, his story, I guess there's lots of stories like it, but his story is pretty amazing. Is he somebody that's a bit of a role model within the armed forces in the US?
I don't think I've heard of him before.
Oh, you haven't heard of
No,
David Goggins?
I don't think
Okay,
so.
well, you better check him out because, yeah, he's got a very interesting story to tell, and he's a crazy fitness fanatic as well. So lots of good videos on YouTube of David Goggins. So have a look. So let's get on to hiking. How did you and when did you get into hiking?
Oh, wow. So the story is, I mean, so when I was in nursing school in 2016 and 17, I lived in Iowa and I was very stressed out. For anyone that doesn't know, nursing school is like one of the most traumatic experiences for a
Mm,
person. It's so difficult. You're constantly worried about failing out or, causing harm to a patient. So I was very stressed in nursing school. And so I would take my dog, I would take Bean, and we would go. Iowa's not known for its hiking, so we would go to a couple of like the smaller parks around where I lived, and there were some like more wooded areas with hiking trails, and we would go out there, and I called it walking in the woods. We would go walk for an hour or two, just our sneakers on, and we'd run through the woods, and I always felt better. And so I kept trying to like figure out what that entailed. So in
mm-hmm.
2018, I mean, I'd gone on a few day hikes, but in 2018 I started accumulating some supplies and hiking longer days and setting up day hikes with friends from work. And it just really started developing this like love of being out in the woods, being out, out in nature. So
Mm.
it just kind of fueled a fire.
Was that something you had previously in life? Were there other experiences that you had in nature that you could relate to, or was this just something new that popped into your life at that stage?
I mean, growing up, we always went camping every year, like camping in a tent in the woods. But this was like my first real taste of like backpacking. I didn't even really know that people legitimately put packs on and walked places. Like it never
Mm.
occurred to me that that was a hobby. And I always knew like Machu Picchu and Peru and different places people backpacked, but I thought that was like the crazies of the world. Little did I know like I would
Mm.
become one of them. But, it never really occurred to me that that was a thing.
Well, the Appalachian Trail, or it's known, I think, to hikers as the AT, is the main topic of what we're going to talk about today. But for the sake of our listeners in 95 countries across the world who probably don't have any idea whereabouts in the United States the Appalachian Trail is, why don't you spend a minute telling us the geography of it, where it starts and where it finishes?
Yeah, so the Appalachian Trail is the longest foot only path in I think in North America. And it spans from northern Georgia, which is in the southeastern part of the United States, the whole way along the eastern seaboard to central Maine, which is in the northeastern part of the United States. So it spans pretty much the whole eastern side of our country.
So when you say it's a trail, it's actually got a pathway, or is it navigable by sticks and beacons and all those sorts of things?
So it's technically a footpath, well trampled, but there are times where if you're not paying attention, you're lost. But they call them white blazes. It's like a 2 inch by 6 inch paint that they put on trees and different building, whatever you're coming across, and that is what helps navigate you. So they're called the white blazes, and those are like the markers that keep you going whichever direction, which is usually north. And so yeah, it's a footpath like any hiking path you would see out in the forest. It's just a dirt path.
Yeah, and we're talking, when we say Georgia to Maine, we're talking about 3,500 kilometres or over 2,000 miles, aren't we? It's
Yeah.
an enormous distance.
Hmm.
So how does that compare to the Pacific Crest Trail on the west coast?
So the Pacific Crest Trail spans from the Mexican border to the Canadian border, and that is 2,650 miles. I'm not sure kilometer wise, but longer than the Appalachian Trail by a small
Ah,
percentage. And
okay.
however, the Pacific Crest Trail is known to be markedly less rigorous due to terrain. So the terrain on the Appalachian Trail is significantly more difficult than on the PCT, which the Pacific Crest Trail. So They both are different beasts. One is a lot longer, but one is far more rugged.
So is there kind of this competition out there amongst hikers between the two in terms of, I've done the PCT and I've done the AT? Is there that kind of thing going on?
I've met hikers that have done both or one or the other, and it's never been a competition between us. I think it's like, oh man, I want to do that one next. Oh, I'm so bummed I didn't get to do it. I can't wait to do that one. So it's, if
Yeah,
anything, it's like a little bit of jealous admiration.
yeah. So how did this whole Appalachian Trail come into your life in terms of you making the decision that, okay, I'm going to do this?
I so I actually was on Instagram and I just was kind of like searching hashtags of Appalachian Trail, and I came across this photo of this very bearded, hairy man, and his name was Tom. He's very well known in the hiking community. His trail name is Jabba, like Jabba the Hutt, because he loves his snacks. And I messaged him on Instagram and I said, "Hey, I see you're like this amazing hero in this outdoor community. Have no idea where to start. You know, like, hope to hear from you." And turns out he's from Pennsylvania as well, like 3 hours away. And so
Mm.
we became friends. We drove back and forth to meet each other. He took me on my first overnight hike on a trail, and it was in November. It was freezing.
Oh,
Yeah, and after that, I kept saying, "Well, I own a home. I can't just sell my house." And he'd say, "Why can't you?" So I listed my
yeah.
house, and it sold in like 3 days. I said,
Wow.
"Okay, well, what about my job? I can't just quit my job." He said, "Well, why can't you?" I talked to my
Mm.
boss. She said, "We can give you 6 months off of work. We'll make this special arrangement for you because we love you." And okay, so that got rid of the very large obstacles. And next was just saving money. And I just worked overtime. I saved every penny, and it came to life. And I still can't believe that it did.
Isn't it incredible though when you put your energy out there to the universe and you really make a decision on what you want to do in your life, then all these things come together.
Yeah, it becomes like an unstoppable force.
Yeah. Were you a believer in that beforehand?
You know, I struggle with destiny and fate and all of those beliefs. And when I first started
Hmm.
the Appalachian Trail, I kept saying, I don't believe in fate, but if I did, this was a pretty sure sign that I was supposed to be out here, because how did all of those things just come together so effortlessly?
Yeah, and the fact that Tom was just a couple of hours up the road and all the rest of it, yeah, incredible.
Yeah, and just being the worst influence, as my mom would say, influencing me to give up responsibilities and go live in the forest.
You grabbed my next question because I was going to say, what did your parents say when you said you were going to do this?
Well, the first bit was shock and a little bit of, well, that's not safe. You're going to do something stupid. And then after we went over facts and figures and I showed them that I was prepared, then it became a betting game on how quickly I would fail. Because I mean, I'm not the outdoorsy type. I was deathly afraid of spiders. I was afraid of the dark and deathly afraid of wild animals. And I think my mom bet 90 days. My sister bet 10 days. And
Oh
everyone else
wow.
was somewhere in between. So, you know, I think
Hmm.
they ate their words though. So it was hysterical, watching them doubt me in a joking manner. They always supported me, but they were
Hmm.
a little confused. Like, is she having a midlife crisis at the age of 29?
Did you give your sister a hard time after 10 days? Did you give her a call and say, hey, I'm still going?
Oh, like on day 3, I called her and I said, her name is Sarah, and I said, Sarah, you might you might win the bet. This is tough. And then, after that, she's like, no, just give it at least 2 weeks, and then give it another day, give it another day. And then before I knew
Yeah.
it, I was completely wrapped up and immersed in trail life, and never thought, didn't actually want to come home at that point.
Hmm. Got a lot of people that listen to my show who are kind of sitting on the abyss of changing their life, and maybe not as dramatic as what you did with jobs and houses, but what are a couple of pieces of advice that you would give people that are looking at having that kind of life changing experience to go and chase something passionate around travel?
Yeah, I think everyone could say you just got to do it, but I don't think that's the case, because if you just do it, you're going to probably fail. So my number one thing is just look at your life and really focus on the parts of it that you love. Now, those parts, they're not the money that you make, they're not the things that you own. It's the memories you make, the people you make them with, and the emotions you feel while making those memories.
Hmm.
So just remember that those are the things that you should be chasing after. And if it's something small as going out and running a 5K or going out and hiking day hikes once a month. Little things make big changes. In the hiking world, we say ounces make pounds. And so little changes can make a world of difference. So if you want to go hike the Appalachian Trail, but it's not actually feasible for you, plan a 3-day overnight trip somewhere on a trail that you can just experience a little bit of that, trail life.
Take small steps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How was that process of quitting the job? How did you feel that final day when you walked out?
Well, I did come back to my original job after, but I just remember like I was working the shift and everyone said like, "Oh, well, we're so proud of you, we'll see you in 6 months." And I kept thinking, God, I hope it's 6 months and not 1 month. I hope I'm not coming back tail between my legs. And I remember at work, everyone was so supportive, but also I just felt like I really don't want to let them down too, because they became, strong support systems for me as well.
You're currently listening to the Global Travel Channel podcast show. If you like our show and you'd like to hear more of our episodes, after this one you can head over to our website at www.globaltravelchannel.com. You can also download our episodes from places like iTunes under the podcast section, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and a host of other locations that are all listed on our website. If you enjoy our content, why not tell a family member, a friend, or even a work colleague about it? We'd like to tell as many people around the world about the Global Travel Channel podcast show as possible. Now, why don't we get back to listening to this episode? Did you do anything physically to prepare for this trail?
I went on a few day hikes. I trained a little bit with running, but I developed a IT band syndrome in my left knee, which is, it's called like iliotibial, I think, plateau, some type of tendon in your knee, and it got really tight while I was training. I was running, and it just got really tight, so I had really bad knee pain. So for the 30 days before I left for trail, I did absolutely nothing, but I trained by eating Reese's Cups. And it all worked out, but I didn't do too much physically because of my knee pain that did go away.
Did you have doubts as a result of having that?
Absolutely. I remember for the couple of weeks beforehand, I would just call my mom and I'd say like, I just know I'm going to fail because my knee already hurts and I'm not even on trail yet. How am I going to carry 30 pounds on my back and go up and down mountains every day when I can barely run, up and down the street and not have knee pain? So it was new for me. I'd never had knee pain in my life before. So it was a big reality that, you're not even out there yet and you're in pain. So anything can happen.
But you went ahead anyway.
I did, yep.
Yeah. So you sold the house as well?
I did.
So tell me, you didn't really have any plans of going back to work, did you? If you sell your house and quit your job, you're pretty much saying, okay, this is it.
Well, yeah. So I received a small bonus when I started at my organization, and I owed them a 2-year contract. So I had to go back or I had to pay back the bonus. So I had a little bit of a chain kind of pulling me back there. But I ended up getting an apartment and going back into the same job. But this year I will be resigning officially from my first nursing job and being 100% jobless for this next trail.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that shortly. So what did your work colleagues think of you going off and doing this when they were living their normal routine 9-to-5 job every day, and here you were saying, all right, I'm going to go and walk 3,500 kilometers?
They all thought I was crazy, and that when you think like, well, what happened to her that she has to go do this? And but I looked at them the same way, like, what happened to them that they can stay? So yeah, I mean, they were so supportive, but also thought I was just crazy.
Yeah, okay, I bet. That's an emotional part of making these life-changing decisions, isn't it? Because there's not going to be too many people that really are sitting there patting you on the back and saying, hey, go for it, because they've got their view on life, and a lot of people just don't want to go outside the comfort zone.
Yeah, long-distance hiking is not like a standard step in the human development.
So from the time you decided to quit the job, sell the house, and start the trail, what time frame are we talking about? How long did that process take?
From the day I discovered the Appalachian Trail to the day I set foot on the Appalachian Trail was under 5 months.
Wow.
I like to grab the bull by the horns.
Yeah, you're a Gemini. You're a true Gemini.
I just come
You-
blasting through the door.
You're not sitting around getting bored. You've got to make stuff happen.
That's me.
And yet you only had done a few day hikes before you took on this enormous task. Did you feel kind of overwhelmed by it? Did you look at the end goal as being, 2,200 miles away, or did you just take it day by day?
I did. I kept thinking if you take it day by day, then one day you could quit. So my goal was always to reach Maine. It was always to go the full distance, but to be realistic that I didn't have the experience. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know if I was going to succeed. So just being humbled that every day I was out there was a success. And so every
Yeah.
day just kept being a success. And I got lucky enough to succeed completely and finish the trail.
Yeah. So what about the decision about doing it alone versus doing it with somebody else? How did that go through your mind? How was that process for you?
Well, I didn't know anyone other than my friend Tom, and he put me in contact with a great hiking community of different Instagram pages and Facebook pages and like Reddit, which I'm not a fan of, but different web sources or websites and resources to connect with the community. And I actually met two women, and we all started the trail on the same day. So although we were all three technically alone, we were all together as well. So that made it a lot less scary.
Yeah, that must have been comforting in a lot of levels.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you say start the trail, where do you officially start it from? What's the name of the place?
So it's called Amicalola Falls State Park. It's in, I don't even know what the town is. It's about 60 miles north of Atlanta. And it's in a small wooded lodge. And we stayed the night in the lodge, and we walked over to the hiker center, which is just like a small building. And behind the building is the trail. It's the approach trail, which is 9 miles that leads to the top of Springer Mountain, which is the technical terminus of the Appalachian Trail. Springer Mountain.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So for all the international people listening today on the show, you fly into Hartsfield-Jackson Airport in Atlanta, and you're only 60 miles away from the start of the Appalachian Trail.
That's true.
It's easy as that. Wow. I didn't think it was that accessible, but it obviously is.
A flight and a shuttle.
There you go. So what time of the year did you start it?
I started in early March, and most people you can start as early as late February. Some people started in January. Now, those people were masochists because it's still really cold in Georgia in the winter. So if I could do it again, I would start early to mid-April. But most people start between March and May.
Yeah, right. So from a temperature point of view around that time of the year, what are we talking about at nighttime? What does it go down to?
Oh, on the first week on trail, it got down to 5 degrees because you have to remember, in Atlanta, it might be great, but at 6,000 feet at elevation, you're looking at, 30 degrees cooler, depending on, wind chill and temperatures and stuff like that.
Yeah. What was the first thing you packed to go on this trip?
The first thing I had to get was a pack, like my bag that I carried. And
okay, you didn't even have a pack.
I literally had nothing. I just thought,
Wow.
This looks fun, I'll give it a go. And I spent, $3,000 on gear. And I'm like, okay, well, this looks like what everyone else has, so this ought to do.
Have you written the book, The Beginner's Guide to Hiking?
Have I written it?
Yeah, you should.
I should write The Beginner's Guide to Having No Idea How to Hike.
You started from zero, right?
I started
you really
from
did start from zero.
-10. So.
That's a good way of saying it. So, okay, so you got your backpack. And so my question then is going to be, what was the first thing you put in your backpack?
Probably some snacks.
Some snacks. Okay.
No, you have to pack like your tent and your sleeping bag, your sleeping pad, your kitchen, which is just a pot and a little stove, a fork or spork is what I used, a water filtration device, clothing, navigation, and food, pretty much. That's about all it takes.
So it's a totally self-sustainable process. So there's nowhere along the way that any of these things are catered for in any shape or form?
No, I mean, you could stay in hotels when you come across towns, and we definitely did that quite a bit because you want to shower in a warm bed and maybe food that you didn't cook in a pot that had 3 other meals cooked in it.
Yeah. So how often would that happen though, in terms of, if you're saying percentage-wise for the entire trail, what was the percentage of time spent in hotels versus in the outback, so to speak?
So this changes. There's certain hikers that go way more bare bones on the hike. For me, I averaged every 3 to 5, maybe every 3 to 6 days in a hotel, where, because you needed to do laundry, you're wearing the same outfit every day, because if not, if you pack a new outfit every day, your pack's going to weigh 100 pounds. So
Mm.
you want to do laundry. You need to buy food because you can't carry everything the whole way.
Yeah.
And you probably want to sleep somewhere other than the ground. So
Mm.
yeah, we would do that
Mm.
every 3 to 6 days as needed.
So how was that emotion around day one? Like when you started off, what was going through your head as you did the first few 100 yards?
My thought was, there's absolutely no way I'm going to finish this, but I'm just going to keep going.
Mm. So you actually did think that you're not going to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was pretty realistic. I had no experience. I was 1,000 miles away from home with two women I'd never met before, and I think both of them had more experience than I did by like a day
Mm.
or so of maybe one
Mm.
or two overnight hikes. But I just kept thinking, man, this is going to be very difficult. I hope that I
Mm.
can pull it out, pull from way down deep and actually make this thing happen.
Mm. Did you stick together as three women for a while, or for the whole time,
The,
or what?
the three of us girls, Melissa, Allie, and myself, we stuck together for 2 weeks before Melissa found a group of hikers that were a little bit younger, more her speed, and
Mm-hmm.
we happily sent her to be with people, that were closer to her in age. And
Yep.
Allie and I stayed together until like almost till mile 500 or so. So we stuck together for about a quarter of the trail.
Mm. Okay,
hmm
fantastic. So you must have built up a good friendship in that time.
Of course, yeah, they become you. It's an insanely close community because you're spending 24 hours a day for multiple days with people. There's
Yeah.
no realm in the world that happens. I
Mm.
wouldn't just meet somebody and spend 24 hours a day for the next 90 days with somebody, So
Mm.
it
Mm.
becomes a very, very, very close relationship.
I'll give you one instance where it does happen. You get on a sailboat and go around the world together.
Yeah, but hopefully you know them before they're on the boat with you.
Yeah, it's not always the case. There's
Yeah.
plenty of crew out there that are going around the world with strangers, that's for
Speaking
sure.
of crew, my trail family and I became obsessed with the Bravo TV show Below Deck. So we know like a
Oh,
little
yeah.
bit about chartered yachts.
Yeah, that's the other extreme of it all,
Yeah.
isn't it? So, how this pack was weighing around 30 pounds, you said, is that right?
It was, yeah, between 25 and 30 pounds.
Mm. How was that? Was that manageable?
Heavy.
Obviously it was.
Very
but
heavy.
was it? Yeah, you're right.
You don't think it's heavy
And
until it's on your back for, 15 hours a day.
yeah, so that was the next question. How long were you actually hiking for each day?
So in the beginning, we did lower mileage to work our way. We didn't want to go too hard into the trail and cause injuries. So the first month or so, we did no more than 16 to 20 miles per day. And
Mm-hmm.
some days that took us 8 hours. Some days that took us 10 hours. Some days it took us 12 hours. Some days 4 hours. So it just depended on the terrain, the weather, the temperature, motivation.
Mm. And what was the weather like in that first week? Did you get good weather?
We got two snowstorms, a low of 5 degrees.
Mm.
But we had sun and it was beautiful, but it was cold. It was
So it didn't knock the morale around, like you didn't get 7 days of rain in a row kind of thing where, you thought, what am I doing this for?
No, that didn't happen until much later.
Mm. Mm. Okay, so that was going to be my next question. I guess the further you went along the trail, you must have come into better and better weather really all the way, yeah?
Yeah, of course. So the Appalachian Trail is known for being one of the rainiest long distance trails. Definitely the rainiest long distance trail in the United States, where it averages rain like a very high percentage. I think it's like between 30 and 50 to 60% of your
Wow.
days you'll encounter rain,
Mm. Mm.
which is not
That's an
fun.
enormous amount. That must have been really frustrating because everything gets wet all the time.
Yeah, and the worst is when you have multiple days of rain where you're setting up a tent that's wet from being in the rain last night, and then you're getting into a moist sleeping bag and you're already wet, so everything's just wet. It's not that comforting.
Yeah, I can see why the hotels came into the picture.
Yeah, there was days where it's like I'm hiking an extra 5 miles. I don't care if my leg falls off, I'm getting to that hotel.
So what did a typical start to a day kind of look like? What time did you get up and get moving?
So when the summer hit, which most of the trail was hiked in the summer, so I'll talk about kind of like an average summer day, we would get
Mm.
up around, my alarm would go off, I think at 5:15. I had a little watch and it beeped at
Mm-hmm.
5:15 every morning. And I'd get up, I'd lay in my sleeping bag until I could convince my body to get up. And then I would get up and I would put on my hiking clothes because I usually just slept. I didn't want to sleep in my sweaty, nasty hiking clothes. So I'd just sleep in the sleeping bag. I'd get up,
Yeah.
I'd throw on my smelly clothes. I'd tear down my tent, put everything away. If it was raining, then I would eat in my tent and then tear everything down. So you tear everything down, you stuff it in your pack, grab a quick, power bar for breakfast, and I would just go. I'd head out. Usually take 20 to 30 minutes.
So a power bar was all you had for breakfast.
I had, yeah, power bars, maybe a few M&Ms, maybe some peach rings. It really just depended. I ate a couple of Pop-Tarts, whatever felt good, whatever sounded appetizing at, 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, so you're not sitting down and making porridge and all this sort of stuff. You're just jamming a bar down, basically.
Some people, we had people in my family, trail family, that made coffee every morning. And I needed to get going. That for me was like my coffee, was just getting my feet moving.
Yeah, right. So how long into this hike did you kind of start to feel your whole life world changing around you? When did you become really, I guess, connected to it?
I think from the very beginning, I felt something was changing. And then it wasn't until like central Virginia, which was like between mile 500 and 1,000. Virginia takes up 500 miles of the entire trail. And somewhere in there, I really got my stride. And I just remember I would cry a lot. And I just kept thinking, I'm so happy to be living this life. And I'm just so blessed that I get to be out here hiking in the woods. And I just remember being so emotional, and just thinking that this was like the happiness that I've always been looking for, just raw.
Mm. What happened to Jack during this?
My mom, she cared for him. She has two small dogs, and so he got to live on the farm for 6 months. So he was in his doggy bliss.
You must have missed him.
I did. I would make my mom FaceTime him, send me videos every week.
Yeah.
So.
And what about the whole thought about work and selling the house and all that stuff that you'd left behind? How was that emotionally?
Yeah, it felt good. Honestly, getting rid of responsibility for me was definitely I was able to breathe after I no longer owned a home. My job was here nor there, and I was just able to, I think for the first time in my life, I was able to experience my reality without stimulus, like without stress of work, stress of relationships, stress of money. Like I just was out there living, and I got to experience like my own emotions completely unfiltered.
Yeah. Did you find a new you in that?
Absolutely. I think I'm still the same stubborn gypsy person I've always been, but I think I've learned that you can't sweat everything. Some things you just have to let go, and you have to remember that, life is so precious and beautiful that you need to keep striving for those happy moments.
Mm. What was it like sleeping under the stars?
There were so many beautiful nights where you just look out and there's just stars, and you're completely alone on, a mountaintop or in a field or in the forest, and you can hear little critters pitter pattering, and you just feel like that's just where you're supposed to be.
Mm.
I think that's
what about the big critters?
So there weren't too many. I mean, on the Appalachian Trail, there's nothing out there that's going to try to eat you. I mean, that I saw at least. Bears were more afraid of us than we were of them. Coyotes were, I only heard a few coyotes once in a while. The biggest critter that probably scared me would be like a squirrel, like getting into my food bag. And eating all my snacks.
Did that happen regularly?
I never had any animals get into any of my food, but I met a few people that had bears get their food. You hang your food in a tree, and some bears were smart enough to retrieve it, or mice would chew on your food if you left it sitting somewhere. I heard of one really rogue squirrel that ate his entire food bag one night.
Oh no. And how far between supply points was it to walk in terms of did you come across somewhere every day where you could buy food?
There was times where you could stop at a gas station or, a resupply point every day, but for the most part, I'd say you were generally 2 days to 5 days in between.
Mm. So you had to make sure you had enough, obviously, for that period.
Yeah, we were always planning in one town how much food we needed to get to the next town.
Yeah.
And alternatives,
Yeah.
say we decided, to not, there was always a second alternative. So if we were going to go 100 miles in between food drops, there was also a place at mile 60 that we could, at that point, reevaluate.
Mm. Did you celebrate the milestones of the miles in terms of, hundreds or 200s or 500s or?
Every 100 miles, somebody usually makes a rock formation or something out of pine cones or sticks that says the mileage. And I took a picture with every single one.
All right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a book in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. And I'm assuming that people are jumping in on the trail at all different points. Like not everybody's walking the entire distance. So I guess there's quite a few people, doing weekends or long holidays or things like that without doing the whole trail.
Yeah. Yeah. There's lots of, we call them weekenders. And then there's lashers, which is like long section hikers. And then there's through hikers. There's flip floppers, soboers. There's a vast array of hikers out there.
Fantastic. And what about locals? When I say locals, I'm talking about Americans, of course, or internationals. Is there a lot of international people on the trail?
I met a ton. I actually hiked with a woman from Lille, France, and her trail name was Styx, and we hiked together for about 1,200 miles.
Wow.
I met a man
that would have been really interesting.
Yeah, I met a lot of people from Germany. We met a lot of Canadians, some people from Spain. So people come from all over the world.
What's the highest point of the trail?
The highest point is Klingman's Dome, and it's 6,600 and some odd feet. And that is in the Smoky Mountain National Forest, which is like in the first 500 miles.
Okay, so you get to that pretty quickly, obviously.
You do, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And the lowest point, how low does it go down to?
It crosses just over the Hudson River in New York, and I think it's like 150 feet above sea level.
Okay, so the New York area is the lowest point.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So what was the best moment on the entire trail for you?
Oh, there's so many amazing moments.
But was there one that was kind of like almost like an epiphany where you just sat there and everything had come together?
Oh yeah, a couple of them. One of my most significant was Mount Washington, which is one of the highest points on the Appalachian Trail. That's in New Hampshire, which is known for its erratic weather. And we climbed up Mount Washington in a foggy 50-mile-an-hour windstorm. We get up to the top where there's like a shelter. I guess it's like a gift shop. They have like a weather observatory. There's a train that goes up. So we sat up there for a few hours until the sun came out. And on our descent, about a mile down Mount Washington on the northern side, there's this giant gully where there's just mountains stretching out to the side, and down the middle is just this big, vast valley. And I sat there for about an hour, and I just took that. It was just, to me, the most beautiful view of the entire trail.
Yeah, wonderful. Is that on your Instagram page?
It is, yeah. I think I have a very cheesy smile, and I'm standing on a rock. It's like the worst smile, but I had to post it because it's just one of my favorite moments.
Yeah.
So,
what was the worst moment on the trail for you?
Oh, I had a lot of those too. At the end, one of the fresher memories was the day we crossed into Maine. New Hampshire and Maine were known for just being very wet. They're very humid at that point in the summer. The forests are very dense, and there's roots and rocks and moss, and all of it is very slick. And that day that we crossed into Maine, I was traversing like down a boulder field, and some of the boulders were 15, 20 feet in height, and you're sliding down them on your bottom, and you're trying to get down without sliding off the rock, and I guess it's, probably wasn't as bad as it felt at the moment because my anxieties were high, but I kept slipping on these rocks and I kept falling, and my anxiety got the best of me, and that day I just broke down and I just screamed, and it was just like a moment of, I'm so close to being finished, and my body is just not trusting itself, and the rocks are slick, and I'm scared of getting hurt. And I just remember I cried like 6 times that day.
Oh, wow. That was a pretty full-on day.
It was very emotional.
Yeah. So how long did it take you to do the entire trail in the end?
From day one to the finish was 172 days.
172 days.
So about 5.5 months.
And is there such a thing as an average time for people to take? Is that roughly around the average time that it takes to walk it?
Yeah, it's usually between 5 and 6, like 4. Well, some people are crazy and do it in 4. So anywhere from 4 to 7 months is standard.
Right.
Hmm.
And many people turn around and go back?
There's only a few. They're called yo-yo hikers, and they go south to north, and then back around. And I think there was only one that did it last year, or maybe 2.
Right, okay, so that's not a regular thing.
It would take you almost an entire year.
And do most people start in Georgia, or what's the go there?
So I would say about 80 to 90% start in Georgia and go northbound. And then there's a small fraction of folks that go from Maine to Georgia.
Yeah, right. So tell me about that last moment of arriving, in Maine and the end of the trail. Was it anticlimactic, or was it just such a huge relief in a lot of ways?
It was so huge. So Mount Katahdin is, I don't know if it's the highest point in Maine, but it's just shy of, it's like 5,276 feet. So it's a pretty high mountain. It's a very well-known mountain in Baxter State Park in Maine. And so the climb up Mount Katahdin was so beautiful and very challenging. There was a couple of places where you're like pulling yourself up with your arms and throwing your leg up and trying to just climb up this massive mountain. And so I just remember I took as long as I could to get up that mountain. And I sat for right below the summit, I sat and waited for the rest of my group because I like got really ahead of myself and kind of booked it up the mountain. And then I sat and waited for them. And when they showed up, we all hiked like the last 10th of a mile together. And we got up to the sign, and there was like 7 of us, I think, and we all touched the sign together at the same time, and everyone was crying and hugging and cheering, and it was absolutely just beautiful. It was so amazing.
Yeah, right. How did you sleep that night, or did you not sleep that night?
We popped champagne, and we drank like 7 cases of beer. So we all slept in a stuporous coma.
So is it one of those things, and I'm a guy that's run a lot of marathons and done all that sort of stuff in my life, and I always finish and say I'll never do it again, but then the next day I'm out there looking for the next one. Were you like that? Were you looking for the next one already?
Yeah, I'd already planned on the idea of the PCT being something I would go for this year. But I said, I will never do this trail again. This trail is so painful. And then within like 30 days, I'm like, maybe I'll do it in 2021. So, yeah, I think it has me. It has me.
So PCT's next?
The PCT is, in the next 2 to 3 months, I'll be headed out there.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. I wonder if we can hook up with you on the trail. That'd be cool.
Oh, I'm sure we could make something work.
Yeah, let's do that. I'd really like to catch up with you again and talk to you about that next big adventure. So, kind of to wrap things up today, what did you learn about yourself after doing all this?
Oh man, I kind of learned quite a bit about just what my soul, like who I am in my soul. But I think one of the things was that there was times that I wanted to quit, times that I almost quit, and times that I was really unhappy. But I think that through adversity, you learn strength. And so on the worst days made the good days better. And I learned that I'm a lot tougher than I thought I was.
So resilience was something that really shone through.
Yeah, I used to be the kind of person that quit when things got tough or when I wasn't happy, and I'd say, oh, well, like I'm not happy, so let's find something else. And I kept saying, let's find something else. And eventually you're going to run out of things to make you happy.
Yeah. So if someone's sitting in their lounge room today and they've got their earplugs on listening to this podcast and they're kind of thinking about, where's my life going? What am I doing? What's your advice to them?
I think if you don't know where your life is going, you should find a trail because it knows where it's going.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, just find something.
Trail.
Yeah, if you don't know what to do, then find something to do until you know.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm going to put all the links to your contact details and in particular your Instagram page on this show notes of this show. I've got another sentence or a few words I want to read to you, and I want you to finish it for me. Is that okay?
Sure.
National parks are for...
Lovers. For everyone.
There we go. National parks are for everyone, but also for lovers. Yeah. Julia, it's been an absolute honour having you on the show today, and we've rushed through our time together. I could speak to you for another couple of hours about this amazing adventure, and also doing a bit of a warm-up for the PCT this year, which will be exciting. And look, I wish you all the very best, and thank you for sharing with us within an hour today about your life journey and how you've overcome adversity to knock off one of the biggest walking trails out there. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
My amazing guest today has been Julia Rocket Sheehan. What an amazing story, and what an incredible human being, taking on over 2,000 miles of walking the Appalachian Trail from Georgia in the south of the United States of America all the way up to Maine in the far northeast. An amazing journey, and I hope that it inspired many of you, even if it was just to get out there and do a bit of a walk today. That would be a great start. Now, if you're looking for more of our amazing podcast stories, you can head on over to our website, www.globaltravelchannel.com. It's easy as that to remember. If you want to download them, go to places like Apple iTunes under the podcast section, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and don't forget to check out our Patreon page. Yes, we have a Patreon page where you can get bonus information about the show and about me, the host, Mark Philpott, and whatever else you want to find out about the Global Travel Channel. If you know somebody that would be an amazing guest for the show, send them my way. Happy to have a chat to them. And don't forget to tell your family, friends, and work colleagues all about the Global Travel Channel podcast. We want to get as many people across the world listening to us as we possibly can. Okay, that's it for me. As I said, my name's Mark Philpott, and I can't wait until I next interview somebody else around the world about their amazing travel adventures. Until then, I wish you all a very happy and safe bon voyage.